Woo! How is everyone doing today? It is Friday, August 15th. A little bit later than I normally come on. I have been out the last couple days, y'all. I was pretty sick actually this week. Woke up in the middle of the night Monday night. Had a little bit of a fever. Felt like some allergies. Eyes were watering, all types of stuff. And then the next day, I was not any better. It turns out I had COVID. So feeling good now. Got a little bit of a foggy brain going on. But man, it's amazing taking 2 days off how much has happened in the markets. Got a lot of really big things to cover. Obviously, we've seen the market dump a little bit. Part of that PPI, we had Scott Bessent make some interesting remarks that he backtracked on. Some speculation, maybe it's market makers flushing out some leverage. So we'll break through all those details for sure. We're also going to talk about some of the broader crypto trends that we're seeing. We've got Trump meeting with Putin right now too. A lot of stuff going on, but how about this? 54 years ago today,
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
Woo! 54 years ago today, the Nixon shock, where he effectively ended the gold standard. Hard to believe when the whole fiat system, or I guess experiment, you could say, began and is obviously failing. We got rid of the gold standard and no longer honored the gold backing. And all these other countries that had built their economies around the US dollar for stability were pretty blindsided by that statement. Nixon had not told any of our global partners that announcement was coming. And he went on public TV to make that announcement to all the American people. Obviously, the Nixon shock, man. So back in the early 1940s, we had the Bretton Woods Agreement, where the U.S. dollar became the global reserve currency. But part of that agreement was that because, the U.S. was the largest global holder of gold, all the countries could trade in their U.S. dollars at any point in time and redeem them at $35 an ounce. And that was, basically what created global stability. But a lot of countries started to kind of call us out because they're like, there's way too many US dollars in circulation and more dollars than you have gold to back it up, and kind of called us out. And some of the countries, I think France was the main one, was about to turn in all their US dollars and call us on this. And Nixon was basically faced with this decision, if all these countries call us out, try to trade in their US dollars, we don't have the gold to back it, the US dollar is effed. So that's when he went on TV and made this decision, basically blindsided everyone and told them, yeah, we're just not going to back the US dollar gold anymore. So pretty wild stuff. Is actually pretty well accepted by the American people. And it had worked out really well for other countries. I mean, other countries had strengthened quite a bit. But since that agreement went into place, the Bretton Woods Agreement, but man, Nixon had to go around the world and try to restore relations with a lot of our trade partners. And then OPEC kind of bailed us out by making the US dollar the global reserve currency, because, everyone that was participating in global oil trade basically had to use US dollars. So that's what bailed us out, is right around the same time that this Nixon shock happened. So pretty crazy stuff. But obviously that meant that everyone could just print money and rack up debt. And that is why we are in the whole debacle we're in today. That is why gold and Bitcoin are doing so well, because I think we all know how this story ends, or at least we know the road that is going down. And that is more money printing, more devaluing of fiat currency. And ultimately, I think that we're going to have to introduce some type of a gold standard or Bitcoin standard at some point, but it's a runaway train, guys. There's no doubt about it. Oh, all that said, guys, all that said, hopefully everyone's having a fantastic Friday. I think Putin and Trump are meeting right now, actually, and this was leading up to their meeting. Quite a flex on the part of Trump coming in here. Flew this B-2 bomber over the top of him, and Putin looked a little uncomfortable about it. They're meeting in Alaska right now. Like, no, that's all right, man. Just don't do anything stupid. Pretty wild stuff there. So they met in Alaska. I think there's a global warrant out for Putin's arrest, but I think Alaska, he doesn't have to worry about it there. So that's one of the reasons they went there. And then he got bombarded by the press right off the bat.
Thank you, press. Thank you.
Like deer in headlights.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you, press. Let's go.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
They just started firing off questions, and so hard to say what's going to come of this. Obviously, if positive news comes out of it, that would probably push markets up. Generally, as you see any type of global turmoil come to a head, like that's a good thing. But I'm not holding out hope that we're going to have any like crazy advancements or significant peace talks here. But hopefully, but you're starting to see this on the timeline. Things like, hey, Hillary Clinton admits she would nominate Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize if he helps end war in Ukraine. It's a little misleading. A little misleading. Here's what she actually said. Let me pull this up.
Meeting with a friend. He is meeting with an adversary, and an adversary who wants to see the destruction of the United States and the Western alliance. But if he could bring about the end to this terrible war where Putin is the aggressor, invading a neighbor country, trying to change the borders, if he could end it without putting Ukraine in a position where it had to concede its territory to the aggressor, had to, in a way, validate Putin's vision of greater Russia, but instead could really stand up to Putin to make it clear there must be a ceasefire, there will be no exchange of territory, and that over a period of time, Putin should be actually withdrawing from the territory he seized in order to demonstrate good faith efforts, let us say, not to threaten European security. If President Trump were the architect of that, I'd nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, so so these headlines, he ends the war, then she would say she'd nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah, if he then leaves, there's no, like, Ukraine doesn't lose any land at all, even the land that's already been seized by Putin. Like, there's no way. I just don't see that happening. I think that the negotiations they're talking about right now, in part, are going to be that Ukraine is willing to give up the land that Russia's already taken. And I don't know how that's going to play out, but I think she realized, like, yeah, she put something out there that's not going to happen. Now the news is, the media is taking it and running with it, and taking a little bit out of context. But let's take a look. The Russia-Ukraine ceasefire in 2025, odds on Polymarket right now, 40% chance. It's kind of been up and down a little bit, but sitting around 40%. So not a huge likelihood, but as you can see, like, since they announced they're going to be meeting, it has been on the rise. So I don't know. We'll see. I bring it up because certainly if positive news comes out, I think that would bode well for markets. But let's talk about the sell-off that we had. Let's talk about, number one, the PPI reports. Obviously, early in the week, we saw really solid CPI reports, which is inflation to the consumer, which, let's be real, it tends to lag behind. It's not always super accurate. I talked about this the other day, like Trueflation, I think, is a more real-time number, but PPI is the producer's price index, and this came in super hot. So we went from a really good CPI numbers that were driving prices up in the markets to PPI coming in super hot, 0.9% from the month prior, against expectations of 0.2%. So the largest jump in more than 3 years. Now, here's where people are kind of freaking out. PPI, of course, is the domestic producers, so the cost they're paying, and there certainly is some correlation, generally speaking, between PPI and CPI. If domestic producers are facing higher prices, then there's a good chance they're going to pass some of that on to consumers and their prices. And that's really, I think, the concern here amongst people are like, hey, how much is PPI going to flow over to CPI? And certainly it's worth asking the question. Now, I think we need to dig in a little bit further, though. I think that people are overreacting a bit to this. For one, how much can they pass on to the consumer? Okay. If we look at the situation right now with people in the country, like student loan and credit card delinquencies are surging. Okay. So household balances, including mortgages, credit cards, student, auto, and personal loans, have reached $18.2 trillion in the first quarter of 2025. So it was earlier this year. But that's $4 trillion more than pre-pandemic levels. Additionally, when you look at student loan debt, which they're now starting to collect on, is roughly 7.3% of total disposable income for U.S. households, up 3%, up from 3% when it started getting tracked in 2003. And then you also have delinquencies for credit cards are on the rise, right? So it's grown 20% since 2021. So the big question here is, how much can companies pass this along to consumers? I mean, I think they would want to pass as much on as possible, but the consumer sentiment right now, and I think the consumer's ability to spend money right now is not really in a position where these companies can necessarily pass it all on. Okay, so I don't think we're going to see that PPI flow through as much as some people might think. But the other thing I really want to call out, and I talked about this the other day, is the fact that when you look at CPI, shelter is more than a third of the calculation. And what we're seeing right now, guys, is we're seeing a huge drop. Rent prices are dropping across the board, but also when it comes to home prices for purchases in real estate. So I thought I marked some. Let's see here. Where's my highlights? They must have gone away. So what we've seen is that prices are dropping. Okay, here it is. The market is now dropping for the 16th straight month of slower sales. There's 1.1 million homes lingering on the market, and some markets are seeing inventory explode. So a lot of markets are just sitting. There's my highlights. A lot of markets are seeing inventory explode. Where's the rest of my highlights? Oh, here we go. The typical listing is now waiting an average of 58 days before selling, a full week longer than last year. And a lot of people are starting to pull their listings. And what they're saying is that people are still in this mindset to get what they could get for their home 2 years ago. And unfortunately, prices are coming down, guys. Like the real estate market is starting to correct. We're seeing this in certain markets like Florida and Texas have already started to get hit drastically. And the CPI numbers have already started to fall quite a bit in those markets. So I think anything that we see in PPI that does flow through, let's be real, a majority of that I don't think will be able to flow through, but I think a lot of that's going to be offset by falling shelter costs, which is a huge portion of CPI. So that is why I think PPI is being a little bit overblown. Not to say that it won't flow through to CPI, but I think that other aspects of CPI will offset, to in the opposite direction. Now, looking at this is kind of interesting. If you want to go through like the timeline of what's happened here in odds on Polymarket for rate cuts. So here we're looking at going into August 1st here. This is when the job market numbers came out, when they revised those jobs down in May and June. And the chance of no change in September went from 60% all the way down to 20%. So we saw this huge flip when the job market numbers came in super weak, because of course the Fed has to balance the job market and inflation. So a weak job market, means that they're more likely to cut rates. So here we go, chugging along. CPI numbers come in lower than expected, like on Tuesday. So that's better again, right? If they have to balance the job market inflation, well, they lower rates to pump the job market back up. Of course, they have to be concerned if they lower rates too soon, then inflation could rear its ugly head, right? So here we are again, CPI numbers coming in below expectations. Then all of a sudden you see PPI comes in hot, and here we are. So we see the shift in the other direction. So you can see these events really having their impact on the likelihood of what the Fed is going to do. Still looking at 30% chance of no change. So very, very likely we see at least one cut in September, nonetheless. But kind of interesting to see all that. Now, the other thing that happened yesterday with the PPI numbers is Scott Bessent made this statement, and I think a lot of people freaked out.
The large gold holding, I doubt we're going to revalue it, but we are going to keep it there.
Let's talk about gold. There's a lot of people saying, that have been, and we talked about this, that they could revalue gold to its current values and use those proceeds to buy Bitcoin. He said we're unlikely to do that.
Again, as a store of value for the American people. We've also started to get into the 21st century, a Bitcoin strategic reserve. We're not going to be buying that, but we are going to use confiscated assets and continue to build that up. We're going to stop selling that. I believe that Bitcoin reserve at today's prices is somewhere between 15 and 20 billion.
Okay, so those are some key points there. He said we're not going to be buying more Bitcoin. Okay, and then speculation went rampant. Like people were like, "Oh, is that why Bohine stepped down?" People started selling, like, "Oh, they're not going to buy more Bitcoin." He did say something else, and so I want to break down both of those statements. First, he ended up backtracking on this. Okay, so he later came out and tweeted, because I think they saw people were freaking out. He said, in addition, the Treasury is committed to exploring budget-neutral pathways to acquire more Bitcoin to expand the reserve and to execute on the president's promise to make Bitcoin the superpower of the world. So he did backtrack a bit and said, hey, we are still looking at ways to add Bitcoin. Okay, so I think he saw the markets were freaking out. Obviously, Cynthia Lummis has a bill proposed where she wants to revalue our gold reserves, which are still sitting at like $35 an ounce on the books, obviously much higher today. But she wants to revalue the gold on the books so that she can use those proceeds to buy Bitcoin. Again, Bessent said he doesn't think that's going to happen. I would be surprised as well. Not to say it can't happen, but I would be surprised as well. But the other thing he said that I haven't seen anyone talking about is that he estimated that our current holdings were $15 to $20 billion. If you do the math there and at current values, that would put us at about 125 to 165,000 Bitcoin in the strategic reserve. And I bring that up because it was not long ago, about a month ago, there's a lot of speculation. The U.S. sold off a bunch of Bitcoin. I went into detail on this at the time, but the main thing was, even though we're holding about 200,000 Bitcoin, the belief at that time was only about 30,000 of that was actually legally owned by the government, because once it's a seized asset, it has to go through legal proceedings. So his statement there, if it is true that 15 to 20 billion is in the strategic reserve today, that would mean that we officially own a much higher amount, again, between 125 to 165,000 Bitcoin. That to me is bullish. Because it did go on to highlight some of this, that 48% of that 200,000 could be returned to Bitfinex creditors alone. So there is a lot of Bitcoin in that 200,000 that wasn't necessarily going to fall under ownership of the U.S. So I think that statement's pretty big, and no one's really talked about that. So overall, the PPI, the mentions by Scott Bessent, I think maybe is why the market sold off. But this guy and Marty Party, he's got some pretty good analysis. He's like, you know what? It's not because of PPI. He's like, it's because of Wintermute and these market makers. Binance, we see this every time we see a huge flush out of the leverage, either longs or shorts. You see this. they're sending, Binance is sending a ton of money to Wintermute to flush out leveraged positions. So are they, is it just them? Is it that we saw a sell-off start and they just wanted to make sure to push that further? I don't know. There's no doubt there's market manipulation, though, with some of these market makers, man. Like they can see on their exchanges how much leverage there is in certain positions, and they can make moves to flush people out. And I think we saw a lot of that. So all that to say, like, I think it's a combination. The PPI scared people. Scott Bessent, then, people took that and ran with that FUD. And then you got Binance using market makers to screw all the leverage positions. And it ended up being this big sell-off. And I'm going to talk, though, people are buying the dip in a huge way. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute. But I want to talk about the other few things we got to keep an eye on. I brought this up before, but we have this Federal Reserve or the Jackson Hole Economic Policy meeting coming up in just about a week, August 21st through the 23rd. Jerome Powell is going to be there. We're going to learn a lot more about what their plans are moving forward at this summit. So this is a big deal. So that's happening in a week. The other thing we need to keep an eye on is NVIDIA's Q2 earnings. Okay. And this is a big deal too, because obviously NVIDIA is the most valuable company in the entire world. And let's see. If you guys remember this, there's a report that came out that Trump was going to allow sales back into China again. But part of that was that from both NVIDIA and AMD, the U.S. government is going to receive 15% of all that revenue. There's a lot of people up in arms about this. Okay. So the earnings reports to be really interesting. But the other thing that was called out here is that this whole 15% deal from NVIDIA and AMD for sales going into China, it's likely to end up in court. There's a lot of people saying that it's not even legal for them to have this agreement anyway. So there's a lot of people speculating that the Q2 earnings from NVIDIA, and let's see, it's on August 27th, might not look so great. And this is something else that's flying under the radar that I haven't really seen anyone talking about, and that is that they recently, the U.S. unveiled through an investigation, there's a huge smuggling operation. NVIDIA chips were going to China. I think we knew that was happening. Now they revealed $1 billion worth over the 3-month period, but there's a lot of people saying it was much bigger than this. And China is a huge part of NVIDIA's revenue. They try to understate how big of a deal it is, but it's a big deal. And it made me wonder, like, how do they find this smuggling ring? By the way, NVIDIA says, like, we didn't know about this at all. And again, people are saying this is a much bigger deal, but it turns out that the U.S. has been putting tracking devices in all the AI chips to track anything that might be going to China and circumventing some of these sanctions that we have. So it makes me wonder, did the U.S. Use these chips to find all these smuggling operations, and then when they're meeting with NVIDIA and AMD, they're like, we know what you guys are doing. Give us 15% of all your sales to China, and we'll open it back up again. It seems like that might be what happened here. But this does make you wonder, like, what are the earnings going to look like moving forward? Because now that they've closed this loop down, NVIDIA and AMD have to decide, like, are we going to take a chance to continue illegally shipping stuff to China or not? And then this 15% deal that Trump has seemingly worked out with them, is that going to actually hold up in court? But I think this NVIDIA earnings reports be really, really important to that could move markets in a big way if it surprises the upside, but also if it surprises to the downside. So that's coming up again on August 29th. The other thing, in September, we've got the job reports again. If you remember, this caused a big sell-off in markets, right? When we had 73,000 is what they claim in July, but then they downgraded over 250,000 jobs from May and June. You better believe they're going to downgrade July. So this is going to happen before the FOMC meeting in September. what's going to happen for the July numbers? If we see a revision anywhere near what we saw in May and June, it's going to be flat, if not negative, for July. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. And lastly, the last thread, of course, is Japan. We've talked about this, the reverse carry trade. The Bank of Japan has had to intervene, it says 18 times since July 29th. They're not getting much demand in their bond market, man, and it is not good. So how many times can the Bank of Japan intervene? Okay, when is that gig up? And that's the big question. So there are certainly some things on the horizon, some potential threats, potential, catalysts as well. But those are the events that I'm looking out for. Jackson Hole, NVIDIA earnings, that job report, and if we have any revisions there, and then obviously what happens with Japan. So those are the macro things to be paying attention to. Now, how has this been impacting markets? We've seen a little bit of a sell-off, guys. We saw, Bitcoin down to 17,000, now just under 17,500 after getting over 120, around 124,000 new all-time highs earlier in the week following the good CPI reports before PPI destroyed everything. Ethereum, we're seeing a similar thing. We saw a huge surge in Ethereum. If this will load. There we go. We got up, close to 4,800. I think that the all-time high, I believe, was towards the end of last year where we got up over 4,800, if I remember correctly. I thought. Was it all the way back in the last market cycle? Huh. So we are currently, I don't know for, you know what? Let's look that up. Ethereum all-time high. When was that? Was this just this week? Let's see. Oh, it was 2021, November 15, 2021, 48.91.70. I think we're going to get past that very soon, by the way. So we got up to 4,800-ish, and then obviously after these PPI reports came in, things dropped a little bit. But, guys, people are buying the dip. All like BlackRock alone bought $1 billion on Thursday. Okay, so they're buying the dip. It's not just them. We got some whales. This whale came in, bought almost $800 million of Bitcoin, whoever that is. We also have this whale came in. This is just earlier, not just a few hours ago. ETH 25x and a Bitcoin 40x. Long positions. And there's some big positions. You never know with some of these, though. They might have shorts on the other side of things, and they're hedging potentially. But still, I think it's very clear that people are buying this dip. And it could be that they know market makers are flushing people out. It could be that they don't think PPI is going to flow through and affect the Fed decision. Could be a number of things. And then Tom Lee with Bitmine, they just continue to accumulate another $130 million of Ethereum. It is truly mind-blowing. I mean, they're at $5.26 billion of holdings now. And Ethereum, I think it's getting ready to pop off. Like, if you look at the exchange balances, it is dwindling. Supply shock is coming. And that's why I do think that we're going to have a new all-time high hit on Ethereum very soon, in short order. There was a little bit of some water poured on Ethereum this week, though, and that has to do with the fact that the big catalyst recently has been this stablecoin bill, because we expect trillions of dollars worth of stablecoins to come on chain, and I think everyone, including myself, everything seemed to be pointing towards Ethereum as the main chain for that. But Circle, and not just Circle, but Circle and Tether are looking to launch their own layer ones. And this is very interesting. So Circle's using ARC, where USDC will be used as the gas token. And then you have, where does it say here? So they're the second largest, obviously. But look at, so there's USDC in the I guess that's pink there. And then you have USDT or Tether is obviously the largest, but it says that Circle isn't the only one. Tether is involved in development and support of two such projects, Stable and Plasma. So they're both looking to move away from Ethereum onto their own chain. So why? Why is the question? And well, I think this is a really good analysis, actually. It makes a ton of sense. So when you look at these stablecoin issuers, the majority of their, or a large portion of their revenue at least, is based on their underlying treasury. So as they issue stablecoins, they're buying up treasury bills. And we've talked about this a lot. Like, this is going to save the US dollar in many ways because they're going to be buying up our debt, but they're getting really good yields right now. But what happens when the Fed starts to drop rates? All of a sudden, their revenue drops significantly. And he runs a couple scenarios here. If we see a 50 basis point cut, that's going to hit their revenue by $309 million. No, that's per quarter. If we see a full 100 basis points or full percent drop by the Fed, that's $618 million a quarter in lost revenue. So that's a big deal for these stablecoin issues. And I think that is why they're launching their own L1s, is because they need to grasp as much value out of the transactions as possible. And in that way, they can start to get fees on top of the yield from the treasuries instead of passing that on to Ethereum and that ecosystem. And I think that is the big reason why they're doing it, is to keep shareholders happy and to offset some of these losses when the Fed does start to cut rates. All that said, there's still, I mean, you got to think all these banks and all these different entities are talking about launching stablecoins, and they're going to be choosing Ethereum. So I don't think that it's, as big of a deal. Obviously, it does hurt the upside a bit for Ethereum. There's no doubt about that, because I think you're going to have USDC and Tether going to have a ton of activity and new stablecoins coming online. If that's no longer in Ethereum, that is a big deal. But I still think Ethereum goes much higher. Okay, I don't think that it's like this doomsday scenario or anything of that nature. But that leads me into a report from Coinbase talking about their Q3 25 outlook. And that brings me to your question here, Bob. He said, Bessent is the most uncomfortable human I've ever... Dude, he looked like he was like half asleep in that interview. I don't know what happened. He had like an allergic reaction or something. His eyes are like swollen. You might not be getting much sleep these days. So this is really, this is huge though. Okay. So this, Coinbase released this like today. They said, through Q3 25 outlook remains constructive, though our view on an altcoin season has evolved. We think current market conditions now suggest a potential shift towards a full scale altcoin season as we approach September. God, I'd love to see that. A common definition for Altseason, we know what it is. 75% of the top 50 coins by market cap outperformed Bitcoin over the preceding 90 days. Okay. Many people have debated, including myself, whether Fed cuts in September could represent a local top for crypto markets. They said, we don't think so. With significant retail capital sitting on the sidelines and money market funds over $7 trillion in other places, and that is true. I covered that earlier this week. There's a lot of money in money market funds. We think Fed easing could unlock greater retail participation in the medium term. Woo! What do you guys think? What do you guys think? I hope they're right. I have thought that, you look at the global, when you offset global M2, and you look at when we have the next contraction, that is happening around the FOMC meeting. You also have all these people that are just like bidding up markets on the expectation of a Fed rate cut. And to me, like, what's the Fed rate cut going to really do? I don't think it's going to have like an immediate impact. And to me, that's why I could see it being a buy the rumor, sell the news event, because it's not some silver bullet that's just going to fix everything. I mean, people are going to like speculatively buy, but that's not going to have an impact immediately. And especially if we drop rates and we see what we saw last year, where the long-term yields increase. that would be very bearish. Okay, so I don't know. But Coinbase, I'm sure they have their analysts, so I hope they're right. I'm sure they have some very smart people working on this that have developed this thesis. And they are right, though. People have debated whether it'd be a local top. So I'm still kind of in between on this. But I do want to talk about the next capital rotation. And I put together this document here to kind of talk about following the institutional money. I wish I could make this larger, but I can't. Okay. Let me get some water. Oh, he said no such thing as Altseason only good projects. I mean, maybe now. That's not how it was back in 2021. Every project went crazy. Okay, so follow the institutional money. Sorry, this is not very big. I tried to download in other formats and it was came up blurry. I don't know why. So we talk about the first move here. And on all these scenarios, I think you need the two catalysts to come together. One is spot ETF approval, and the other is some type of a regulatory change that I think when they overlap, we're seeing institutional money flow in. So in the case of Bitcoin, we had the spot ETF approval January 10th of 2024. And then on top of that, we had the strategic reserve, right? So we had the regulatory catalysts and we had the spot ETF approval. I guess you could look at those both as regulatory, I suppose, but spot ETF plus separate regulatory catalysts. And we saw obviously Bitcoin had its run. The Bitcoin Treasuries ran as well. And I do want to talk about the dates here. So if we look at all time, we had that run up in 24, right after that, the spot ETFs got approved. We had the run up, right? Then we had the Trump pump based on the expectation of strategic reserve. So it ended up being a little bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news event, but those are the two run ups from those two events taking place. Obviously, we had the tariff scare, and then now we're back up on back in the right direction again. Oh, sorry, I meant to share this. So here you go. So the big run up right here, following the spot ETF approval. Okay. And then again, the Trump pump right after the election on the expectation of strategic reserve. So there you go. The two moves there. And then again, that the scare from the tariffs, but we're back. Okay. The next rotation we saw was into Ethereum. This is what we've been seeing now for a while. Obviously, they already had their spot ETF approved, so we'd already seen some inflows from that. But the stablecoin bill has been the big catalyst for Ethereum because everyone's like, "Hey, all these stablecoins are going to come online." Well, where are they going to go? They're going to go to Ethereum. I guess the institutional chain at this point. And what did we see? Same type of deal. We saw people buying up, really earlier this summer in expectation of the Genius bill passing. And I think that was the major catalyst for Ethereum leading up to this. All right. So what have we seen? We've seen, ETH ETFs have been flying. Ethereum treasury companies have been flying. So again, the same type of deal, ETFs, treasuries, institutional capital. We saw the thing, ETFs, treasuries, same thing right here. Okay. So where's the next rotation? I think it could be Solana. Okay. I think it makes sense for it to be Solana. But I think we need the regulatory side of this for it to work. And of course, I'm talking about the market structure bill. In fact, I'm starting to think that we need the market structure bill to pass before the Solana ETFs pass. And we're looking at September, October timeframe here. So if I'm going to explain why this is my thesis, but if we do, if Coinbase is right, and let's say they are, and let's say we see an alt season start in September and start to run into October in November, this could all come together and these things, this could freaking fly. Okay. But the market structure bill is very, very key in all of this. And here's why. Okay. Here we go. So just today, we saw that the Solana ETFs got pushed out again to mid-October. All right. Because just before today, it was expected to be like late August, early September. That's why I think a lot of the Solana treasury companies ran. And that's why we saw a pullback today, is because of this this delay. So it says the SEC postponed its ruling and with a new deadline on October 16th, 2025. Says that it needs more time to review the applications and the issues they raise, citing they need to thoroughly assess broader market implications, regulatory compliance, and investor protection measures before taking any action. And that part's really key, regulatory compliance. And I think they are waiting for the market structure bill to pass so they have regulatory compliance before they launch these or approve these spot ETFs. That's how I take it. So applications for Grayscale, Fidelity, ProShares, Canary Funds, and Solana ETFs face similar delays for Solana ETFs. This part's really important, though. BlackRock said it has no interest in the Solana market because it's satisfied with its existing Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs. And this is a change. They didn't happen to say that earlier. They've kind of changed their tunes recently. It says analysts say BlackRock's choice could influence how other large managers approach the Solana ETF market in the future. It may also reflect the firm's assessment of Solana's relative risk compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum. So this is huge because BlackRock's approval ratings on ETF applications are like 99%. This is what I talked about that last fall, almost a year ago, no, 2 years ago. Sorry, before the Bitcoin ETFs were approved. I talked about how BlackRock having ETF applications in made it very likely to be approved. To me, I think BlackRock might be waiting for more clarity before they start to move on Solana. Okay. And here's what I mean. It's been very clear for a while. Obviously, Bitcoin is not a security, but Paul Atkins with the SEC has made it clear as well that Ethereum will not be considered a security. So there's clarity around both of those. We don't yet have regulatory clarity around Solana and all these other alts for that matter. And I think the clarity bill, the market structure bill, same thing. Okay. I think that is what I think that's what's being waited on right now from BlackRock, from these other spot ETF, approvals for Solana. So to me, we need that clarity bill to pass. And when will that pass? Well, let's see here. Looks like, and again, this is going to determine whether SEC or the CFTC oversee whether it's commodity or security for these different assets. And so that the two committees are working together, and they are planning to have a comprehensive legislative package to advance to the Senate floor. They're hoping to have a committee voted on it by September 30th. So we could see this market structure bill get passed early October. And then if that gets passed before this new deadline for the spot ETFs for Solana, on October 16th, we could see all this come together in mid-October. Wouldn't that be something? Okay. Wouldn't that be something? Because then you have the recipe for what we've seen that's made all the money flow into Bitcoin and Ethereum. You've got the spot ETFs approved. You've got the regulatory catalyst with it. In this case, it would happen at the exact same time. And that could be absolutely massive. Okay. Because you saw what happened with MicroStrategy, the biggest Bitcoin treasury. You're seeing what's happened with Bitmine, with Ethereum. It's done a 15x since June. So what could we see with Solana? Okay. But this is, again, the clarity bill, I think, is a big part of this. And if you look at, poly market odds right now, 53% chance. So this is where I think the next rotation is going, but I think we need to be aware of what the potential risk is here. Like if the clarity bill doesn't get passed this year, I think it very much limits the upside and the likelihood of spot ETFs getting launched. So let's hope this does get passed, but it has not stopped Solana from seeing some major moves. So Solana, this is the stablecoin activity. Look at the supply of stablecoins in Solana in the last 24 hours. It's crushing everyone else. Okay. We also see open interest hitting ridiculous levels. New all-time high of 993 million. Okay. The last time we saw anything like this is the first US Solana staking ETF. So not a spot ETF that's fully sanctioned by the SEC, is kind of a workaround one. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but you're seeing open interest skyrocket for Solana right now. And this is the pseudo spot ETF. It's not. It's a staking Solana ETF, but it is seeing massive volume as well. So we are seeing the money already start to flow into Solana. I think some of this was front running the expectation of spot ETFs launched. But I do believe this is still where we're going to see the rotation. It might just be pushed out a little bit. Okay, but Solana overall is still $186, guys. It's not like it's down, but this thing could absolutely move. And I think once those two things come together, those two catalysts we've been talking about, I think we're going to see Solana absolutely surge. Okay, this could be, early October. And you better believe if the expectation as we lead up says that it's going to happen, people will front run it. We saw this with Ethereum. Ethereum started to make its move well before the Genius Act got passed. Okay, people front ran it. I think we're starting to already see this to an extent. My plays, you're right, Bob. It is up, actually. Beat me to the punch. I covered earlier this week. I think it was at about $6.60. So it's still up quite a bit, but you're seeing it's down today because the spot ETF applications got pushed out further again. I think people sold off, but you can see people were already starting to buy and front run it. I think some people are like, well, I'm going to pull my capital out, place it somewhere else for another month. And then I think you're going to start seeing it run up again. But, talking about that, they obviously tapped Arthur Hayes. So you guys know Arthur Hayes. He's going to be the talking head for this treasury company, kind of like Tom Lee is for the largest Ethereum one. This is the largest Solana treasury. They have up to 2 million Solana in its treasury. Okay. They're also going to be staking to earn yield. So there's the clarity around staking earlier. I guess it was like last week. But this is big. Think about it. They're going to be earning yield on Solana. They're also adding. They already have 2 million as it is. But they're going to be ramping up. Look at what these other treasuries are doing. But when you talk about 2 million times the value of 185, it's $370 million worth of Solana already that they're holding. Well, what's their market cap? 372 million. Okay. So their market cap to the amount of their underlying holdings is about 1-to-1. When we look at, let's see, Bitmine's sitting at a $10 billion market cap, guys. Their underlying holdings are about half of that. So they're about 2-to-1 market cap to their underlying holdings. So, if that holds true, that would mean, just looking at market cap to underlying, assets, this is, about half, undervalued quite a bit. Now, you consider the fact that once these catalysts come together, the price of Solana could absolutely moon. Okay. Then you add the fact that they're likely going to be adding more Solana. They're just getting started. I think this thing could absolutely go nuts. Again, though, we need the market structure bill to pass. We need the spot Solana ETFs to pass. I think if both those come together, it's a perfect storm. I've already taken a position in this, but I plan as we get closer and get more clarity around this stuff. I think, I definitely will be buying more, but I think that we need some more clarity around the market structure bill and the timing of it. The other one is this DeFi Development Corp. So I've took a position in this as well. This is the second largest Solana treasury, currently sitting at 391 million market cap. So actually a higher market cap than UpXE. But they just announced today they're up to $263 million in SOL. They added more today. $22 million worth added today. And this is what we're going to see. Like these treasury companies are starting to build assets. And I think a lot of it is the expectation of the spot ETFs. and that market structure bill. So going back to this graphic here is where I think, okay, Solana ETFs are going to see record inflows. We're going to see the treasury companies absolutely go nuts, I think, if both of these catalysts come together. But here's the other thing people need to remember. Solana is the degen chain, guys. So, like, what do you think is going to happen when retail, it's the number one retail chain, they're going to start funneling their Solana holdings as institutional pumps their bags into other projects. I think memes and DePIN projects built on Solana could absolutely benefit in a huge way. So again, I hope Coinbase is right that we don't see a sell-off of the FOMC. The way I'm planning on kind of playing this, like, I do have substantial DePIN holdings. I do have substantial holdings in some of my IRAs and some of these treasury companies, but I do still have powder on the sideline. And I think leading up to the FOMC, I'll continue to take some money out and put it on the sidelines in case we have that dip. Because I think it's possible we do see a sell-off and then we get this clarity bill and then we get these spot ETFs in like mid to late October. And that's okay. Then I think we surge up there. But it is possible that Coinbase is right. We don't see any drop, and maybe we just see some chopping. We see some small corrections along the way, and then we just moon up. But I do think that is the timeline here as of now. Again, we have to see how this materializes. But Coinbase talking about September Altseason beginning. Generally, Altseason can be pretty quick. A real Altseason, a couple months, 2-3 months tops. But this could all happen and all come together, man, and it could be the perfect recipe. Now, what about from there? Because you see I have next rotation. I think this could kind of coincide at the same time. XRP, Doge, and Avalanche. Again, market structure bill, I think, would be bullish for those also. In particular, we have Grayscale just announced today that they have applied for a Dogecoin trust. We have several Doge spot ETF applications in. Doge is now sitting at what, 22 cents, I want to say. Let's see here. 23 cents. Okay. If those spot ETFs get approved, and again, we see the market structure bill passed, this shit is going to fly. You better believe it. And then imagine if Elon, and we don't think it's necessary, but imagine he throws a catalyst in there. Yeah. Off to the races. And this is the one I'm looking at, BitOrigin. So they're sitting at $35 million market cap, 51 cents. It's up, if we look over the last 6 months, it is up quite a bit from 16 cents to 51. But they already have 70 million Dogecoins in their treasury. And they said they previously announced a 500 million equity purchase and convertible note facility. And their goal is to establish as one of the largest Dogecoin treasuries. Okay, so that they are looking to be the Dogecoin treasury. Right now, I think their holdings are worth some like $15 to $20 million. Market cap of 35 million, but obviously they got some plans in the coffers to very much expand those holdings. So those are the ones, man. I mean, those are the plays. That's what I think is going to happen. And I think it coincides with what we could see with DePIN season, particularly with Solana. But I think this market structure bill is a big deal. It's a really big deal. And obviously looking past that, you've got others, right? You've got XRP in there, likely to have spot ETFs approved as well, driving institutional money. There's some XRP treasury companies too to take a look at. Cardano, HBAR. Okay. So there's a number of them to keep an eye on. But again, I think it's going to take a little bit of time to materialize based on the regulatory stuff. But certainly some things to look forward to and be excited about. There's no doubt about that. But what about DePIN in particular? And I brought this up the other day. We are seeing now, it looks different on your screen than on mine. That's weird. The interest over time, this is Google Trends. We are now at all-time highs. guys, on DePIN. If you look at the timing of these other spikes, this is in 2024 in spring, leading up to the biggest surge, the top for DePIN projects, where we saw massive runs up. We saw the same thing towards the end of 2024. Massive runs up and market topping weeks, 2 to 3 weeks later. And we're seeing this again now, hitting new all-time highs. This is a great sign that there's retail interest and interest coming into DePIN. Same thing for decentralized physical infrastructure network, new all-time highs on that as well. So guys, things are trending in the right direction. Things are coming together. There's no doubt about it. I want to call a few other things out about DePIN. Highly recommend watch Proof of Coverage. Watch this interview. Some real alpha drops in there. Very, very good insight. All these guys are very well spoken in this interview. Highly encourage you to watch this. Speaking of Helium, people that get Seeker phones can now get 3 months of their $15 per month Air plan. 3 months included. 10 gigabytes of data, unlimited talk and text. After that, 50% off for the 3 months of the Air plan from that point forward. US only, obviously, but that's pretty big integration with Helium Mobile. You know who else is integrating with Helium, or with Seeker rather? 375 AI said they have an integration. Geonet has an integration, has RTK built in with Geonet network. It's going to be massive for Geonet getting more token holders. This happened too. I had mixed feelings about it. Some people think it's a big deal. Others say it was a stupid. So they Helium Mobile donated 11,000 to Mr. Beast. Obviously, he has like the biggest following. I don't know. Some people think it's a good use of money. Some people think it's dumb. But the big thing is somebody is accumulating, guys. Somebody's accumulating a lot of HNT. Said that 14 fresh wallets have been continuously accumulating, total of $32 million. Average entry of 322. So there are some whales accumulating Helium right now. Follow the smart money, y'all. Hey, always follow the smart money. Right now we're sitting at, we've got a little bit of a pullback. 264. Oh man. Where is Helium going to go? What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Bob said, do you think we'll ever see 75K Bitcoin again? Maybe. Probably. I mean, we've seen in the bear markets, we've seen Bitcoin drop to the high of the last market cycle. And I for one, the treasury stuff I'm paying attention to because I think you can make some money in the short term. But I for one am thinking that that's going to blow the F up, man. Like they're going to start using leverage. They're going to start getting crazy. You start seeing that stuff unwind. It could get ugly. Could get very ugly. So I think the treasury companies could end up being what crashes the market here. We'll see. But I don't know. If it does, I'll buy a lot. I'll be buying if Bitcoin drops to it. He said Helium will never reach 10 plus again. I'll take you up on that bet. I'll take you up on that bet. I'm not saying it's going to hit all new all-time highs, but guys, within a year it could be net deflationary on emissions. Same with Geonet, both of them actually. They talk about it in this interview. I told you to watch. Watch this interview. Watch this interview. They talk about how H&T Geo could be deflationary within a year. That's pretty big, man. No, I think it will surpass $10 again. Arweave, over 20 billion transactions stored permanently on Arweave. Follow the fundamentals and the usage, guys. The usage trends. It's freaking insane. Freaking insane. Do not sleep on Arweave. It's up. I mean, it's down right now, but it's up a lot from when I covered it I think it was down to like $5 or upper fours back in June. Sitting at 728. This thing, yeah. I don't need to say anymore. Arweave is a great project. Amazing tech. AI is a supercomputer built on top. Look at 44 million. Get out of here. Get out of here. Yeah, people are saying $100 H&T. Not me. Not me. But people were. People were saying higher than that, I think. Look at Aria down here sitting at 3.53 million. Indexer for Arweave. People are sleeping. Don't sleep. Don't sleep on this shit, man. When the markets are down, you're seeing these types of sell-offs like, woof. To accumulate. Ionet just hit 20 million total compute hours. How about that? It says powering 166. Oh, that's the equivalent, right? Yeah, that's the equivalent of powering 166,000 AI units for a full year of autonomous operations. Yeah, man. Ionet has turned around. They're getting a lot of usage. The GPU aggregators are going to freaking go bananas at some point. Just wait. I think they have the most upside as far as market caps go by far in DePIN. And when you start to think about the AI movement and the power capacity, the issues we're going to have with our grid, leveraging idle GPUs that are just sitting there at the edge and idle GPUs that are out there are going to be so important. Yeah, man. Like I think these GPU projects are going to go freaking absolutely nuts. Sitting at $114 million market cap. Which of the GPU projects do you think will come out on top? Well, you all know exhibits to me, because they're all sourcing from exhibits, like for the high end compute. So that's my bet. Aether has some crazy claims in the revenue, so Aether could move. When you say on top, I assume you mean market cap. So to me, but Aether's even sourcing from exhibits. Let's be real. So to me, it's exhibits, but I'm the only one beating that drum that I've seen so far. Once they launch a token, everyone will beat that drum, I'm sure. But remember, that was the one. That was the one, baby. A lot of these projects I cover that haven't had token launches yet, a lot of people wait until there's tokens to pump because they want to pump their bags. That's that, man. We're trying to share the alpha now. We all want to get in early. Hivemapper, some more bursts in Barcelona. How about that? They also have a discussion coming up. We got Ariel on there with Multicoin Capital and Masari. That's going to be interesting. No, I agree. I had Mark Feidelman, their CMO, on the space a few weeks ago. He's like, hey, 60 days. We have some big announcements coming. I think so might be around exhibits. Honestly, I don't care, man. Like, I would like them to have a token, but I'm okay with them not having excitement about it because they're building and they're driving revenue, and their revenue is growing like crazy. They're flying under the radar because they don't have a token right now. That's okay. It won't be like that forever. But I wouldn't mind if we have a big run up in September, October to pull some money out to take a huge position in that project. That wouldn't suck. So Helium announced this, but yeah, they're gonna have Ariel on Multicoin, Masari, Joey Hiller's gonna be the mod. I'm gonna tune into that one. That's Tuesday, August 19th. That should be an interesting listen. What's Hivemapper price doing? They had a little pump last night. Look at this spike. Immediate sell-off. The hell? Let's see. WeatherXM. This thing's sitting at 6.92 million market cap. Get out of here, bro. What? I actually finally heard back from their team. they kind of went radio silent on me for a little bit. I think they were busy. But I am getting, I believe, their CEO on for an interview next week. That's going to be exciting. I like WeatherXM. They're a good project. And guys, if you didn't listen to this, you didn't make this space earlier in the week. 375 AI and their CEO, Harry Dewhurst, came on the space. It was solid. It was very solid. It's recorded, so go and listen to that if you haven't already. I did just repost it. Let's see here. Let me go to my page. Oh, there I am. There it is. I did just repost it, so it's there. Exhibits token, depending on clarity bill, seems what you implied in the interview. That's probably some. I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of their thinking, because you don't. If I were a project right now, I don't know that I'd want to launch before the clarity bill comes out, because it could be the difference. You could make some small changes to your tokenomics. It could be the difference between you being classified as a security or commodity. And if we're that close, if they're expecting this to happen in October, like, what's waiting another month and a half to be sure of that? Because that could have a huge impact on your project. So, yeah, bro, it is on X. I do have an interview on YouTube with Harry as well. That's good. But this is one more recently. He dropped some alpha in there, by the way. They've got like a direct Twitter. What? Actually, you know what? I was talking to Tyler. I think I'm going to start uploading our spaces onto Apple for podcasts. So I think I'm going to start doing that because there's some really good. We've had some really good guests on there, and I think it would be good to get those up on Apple so people can listen to them when they're driving and stuff. Just another avenue. Oh yeah. Also, I'm going to start. So I do stream to X, YouTube, Rumble. I'm still going to start doing Odyssey as well. So I don't know if you guys know anything about Odyssey. Let's see. Let me pull up Odyssey. So Odyssey was purchased by Arweave. So they are going to be moving all of their videos onto Arweave for permanent storage. That's going to be interesting. I'm also looking at potentially starting to move some stuff into Base. Apparently, Base is creating a huge creator platform also. So kind of looking to diversify, because I know YouTube's been deplatforming people. I don't want to be over reliant on one centralized platform, and then all of a sudden, like, all the work I've done is just gone like that. That would fucking suck. WXM is good, but need customers. Yeah, I think they're working on that, man. I think they're working on that. They have some data that's very valuable. I think they're doing a good job. See, open source YouTube. Yeah, Odyssey's a good platform, man. They're in the process of syncing up. So I had to email them. They're syncing up my YouTube, so all my videos are automatically going to jump over to and to be duplicated over on Odyssey. So I'm going to start streaming there as well. I think that's going to be a really good platform, especially with their integration that's coming with Arweave. That's going to be freaking huge. So people in 100 years from now can watch my videos and be like, man, that guy was onto something. Bitcoin's $50 million. Wouldn't that be funny? Oh, man. Well, boy, I am back. The last couple of days were a little rough, man. I was feeling a little under the weather, not gonna lie. It's been a couple of years since I had COVID, so it wasn't feeling fantastic, but we're back. We got the energy. Maybe tomorrow I'll go for a run or something, try to sweat a little bit. It's been a few days. Oh, hopefully everyone's having a fantastic day and has a huge weekend ahead. We got the Air and Water show here in Chicago. That'll be fun. Excited about that. I was gonna go back to St. Louis, but had to cancel those plans. So excited for the Air and Water show tomorrow. We got a couple of like little parties I'm going to. But with that said, guys, I think things are coming together, man. I think the sell-off this week was a little bit of an overreaction to the PPI numbers. Said, me too. Weird cough, headache, and nose. Dude, that's what I had. I don't know if you're taking a COVID test, but it's the same shit. My eyes were watering too. I was like, is this allergies? Is this a cold? What's going on here? The worst has just been fatigue and like not like foggy thinking a little bit, but it's starting to clear up now. But in summary, guys, yeah, I think the PPI caused a bigger sell-off than what we should have seen. I think the market makers stepped in and tried to flush some leverage positions out, frankly. But follow the smart money, y'all. The big buyers are accumulating. They're stepping in. They're buying the dip. I think that you look at what Coinbase is saying with Altseason coming. I think there's a lot of catalysts that are coming, and in particular, I think Ethereum will continue moving. But I really, really do feel strongly that if we see these things come together, the Clarity Bill and the spot ETFs, we're going to see some big moves, guys. Of course, it needs to happen first, but I think leading up to it, I'm already building positions and trying to get ahead of it a little bit. But you've seen what's happened so far, and then with Solana pumping, I think it could move DePIN a lot. But we're seeing the trends move in the right direction already. I think things are certainly coming together. Not to say we can't have any dips along the way. It happens, guys. It happens every bull market. You have some massive pumps, but you're always going to see those 10, 15, 20% corrections. It happens along the way. It's very normal. But the big thing is make sure you're taking some profits and you have some powder to buy when the market's low. I round trip my bags in the last market cycle. I certainly took some profits in this market cycle. Wish I had taken more back in December last year. Still have done really well over the last couple of years, no doubt. But I think we have some bright times ahead. And that's super exciting. With that said, that's what I'm going to leave you with. My throat is starting to get itchy. Appreciate you all. Have a fantastic weekend. We will be back. Probably not this weekend, but if not this weekend, Monday. I'm sure we'll have plenty to discuss. Peace.